Hello and welcome to your Wheel and Anchor webinar about our program to Peru, land of the Incas, in May of 2025. If you can imagine yourself overlooking this incredible view of Machu Picchu, which you see here on our opening picture, then this is definitely the program for you. Before I get into telling you about Peru, let me say a few words about Wheel and Anchor, who we are. We are a community of travelers from all across Canada. And what brings us together is that we share a like minded view of how to travel the world. If you're watching this webinar, you've perhaps already joined our newsletter and you've read our Traveler's Creed, which sort of spells out the way that we act as travelers, the way that we see the world, the way that we savor every moment and strive to learn and to interact, and at the same time be respectful of the places and the people that we're visiting, as well as our fellow members. That's basically who we are at Wheel and Anchor. To accomplish this lofty mission, we have a wonderful team of people. And so I want to introduce myself and the most important person for you as someone considering joining one of our Wheel and Anchor trips. First of all, my name is Gordon Drager. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I'm the one who curates pretty much all of the programs that we have on offer. And that comes on the heels of my over 30 years of experience organizing trips for Canadians to virtually all parts of the world. As you can see, I have a great team of people. This is some of them here shown in the little circles below. But for you, the most important person will be Paula Sarnik, and she is our senior trip specialist. She's the one who has a knowledge on all of our trips, but also what our members like to do. And she'll be the person that you'll have a chat with if you haven't already spoken to Paula before. She'll find out what your interests are and match you up with the right trip for you. The agenda for today's webinar is, as consistent with all of our webinars, is to take you, someone who's curious about this country down in South America and all that it has to offer. As I mentioned, you probably have heard of Machu Picchu. Maybe you've heard of the capital, Lima. Maybe you've even heard of the Nazca lines to the south of Lima in the desert. But there's so much more to this country. And today I'm going to take you on a trip around following the itinerary that we're going to have in May of 2025 and give you a chance to decide if this is the trip for you. Let's first take a look at the map to give you an overview of what this program entails and the route that we're going to be following. Our trip begins and ends in the capital city of Lima that you can fly to from multiple points around North America. From Lima, we have an extension program, so a pre-trip that will take the first 4 nights, and we're going to travel overland from Lima down to a place called Paracas, which is the gateway to the Nazca lines. And I'll share with you a little bit more about that when I cover the day-by-day itinerary. So that program will be 4 nights. We'll then go back to Lima and rejoin with the rest of the members who are joining for the main trip. So our main trip begins in Lima, and we spend a couple of nights there, and then we fly down to Arequipa, which is a wonderful city high up in the Andes Mountains. So we'll explore Arequipa before then flying over to Cusco, and Cusco, again, high up in the Andes Mountain. In fact, Cusco is over 3,000 meters above sea level, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And from Cusco, we then head down into the so-called Sacred Valley, which is the pathway to Machu Picchu itself. So we'll be visiting Machu Picchu and some other wonderful sites in the Sacred Valley before returning to Cusco. And then from there, our journey will, for those continuing home, we'll go back to Lima for your return flight. Or we also have a post-trip extension program, so an optional program to visit the upper Amazon at a place called Puerto Maldonado. So we fly from Cusco to Puerto Maldonado, spend a few nights on the Amazon River at a wonderful lodge, and then from there via Puerto Maldonado again back to Lima and home. Before I get into sharing with you our day-by-day itinerary, I just wanted to tell you about what I think makes Peru such a fascinating destination. Of course, most people go to see Machu Picchu. That's probably number one on the list of reasons why one might visit Peru, but there is such a diverse landscape, as well as the cities and the people and the flora and the fauna. It's much more, I think, than you think it is. And I recall back to my first trip to Peru many years back, and how taken aback I was by all the things that there is to see, from these high mountain ranges of the Andes to the vast deserts along the coast, and of course the incredible rainforests of the Amazon basin. So, as mentioned, our pre trip program begins in Lima, as does the main program, just 4 days earlier. And Lima is a relatively easy city to fly to. There are connections, a number of connections from points in Canada, either via the US or via Panama. We do even have a couple of direct flights, although they don't go every day of the week. So, you can consult with one of our air travel consultants to find out the best route for you, depending on where you're coming from. When we arrive in, and of course, many flights will land first thing in the morning. Of course, that depends on the routing that you take. We'll bring you from Lima Airport directly into your hotel. And we're going to be staying in the Miraflores district of Lima, which is a neighborhood. Lima, like many cities, has numerous neighborhoods, and Miraflores is really one of the finest. Right on the ocean. In fact, there's some huge ocean cliffs on the Pacific that you can walk along not far from the hotel that we're staying in. This is a hotel that I've had the pleasure of staying in a couple of times before. I really enjoy this. And it's quite a safe part of the city. You can walk around the neighborhood. There's a myriad of cafes and restaurants all within walking distance of the hotel. Given that we're almost in the same time zone, depending on which time zone in Canada you're coming from, there's no jet lag, so we can sort of launch right in and enjoy the day by strolling around and exploring a little bit of this wonderful part of Lima. So on the second day, after enjoying a delicious breakfast at the hotel, we're going to set off and head south for the 3-hour drive down to Paracas. The drive itself takes us through the outskirts of Lima and through the vast deserts. In fact, we'll be driving down a very important highway. This is the Pan American Highway, which extends the entire length of South America all the way down to Ushuaia at the southern tip of the continent. When we arrive into the hotel, we'll check in, and you can wander around. And actually, the hotel has a private museum that has an amazing collection of artifacts from pre-Hispanic cultures, including the local Paracas civilization, who were known for their irrigation techniques and all their textiles. And it's at that culture, that civilization, that is alleged to be responsible for the creation of the Nazca lines that we'll see later in the trip. There's also a beautiful beach. We're right on the ocean here, and so you can take some time trying to catch some pictures of some amazing birds, like the iconic Andean flamingos, or the pelicans, like you can see here on the picture. It's not a great bathing beach, I must admit. The hotel has a wonderful pool, because you'll find there's sort of a lot of seaweed and so on floating in the water, but the vistas from here and the wildlife that you might be able to spot is quite remarkable. Now, today is the day that we're going to be heading off to the airport for our overflight of the world famous Nazca lines. When we arrive at local Ica airport, we will embark on our special planes, whose purpose is solely for the overflight of the Nazca lines. These planes are, again, small. They typically hold up to 8 to 10 passengers. So they're propeller planes, and they will make the approximately 30-minute flight down to where the Nazca lines actually are. And you'll spend probably about a half an hour overflying all these different lines. And there are literally hundreds of them. There's hundreds of straight lines. There are over 70 geometric figures, like the one that you can see depicted here. And of course, nobody knows what the origin of these Nazca lines actually were. They date back as long as anyone can remember. And they've remained intact in the desert despite, storms and wind and all of the natural elements. So it is really an amazing thing to witness. And of course, the best, and I would say the only way, but the best way to see them is by this overflight. We'll be back at the hotel by early afternoon. There'll be lots of time to enjoy the amenities of the hotel. pool and the museum that I was mentioning before, and to just sort of relax into this wonderful space. On this day, we head out with some of the other guests from our hotel on a boat trip out to the Ballestas Islands. On our way out to the Ballestas Islands, off to our left, we're going to pass an island with a huge mountain of sand, and on it, we're going to see yet another example of a geoglyph, which is in the shape of a chandelier. This is looks like the Nazca Lines, although I've been told that it's actually not part of the Nazca Lines. But in case you missed the flight over, you'll still have the chance on this boat trip to witness that. But our destination, of course, the Ballestas Islands themselves, where we'll get to see numerous varieties of marine life, including the Humboldt penguins. This is the one place in the world here and in Chile that you can see them in their natural habitat. But of course, there's sea lions, a variety of sea birds, dolphins if we're lucky, a whole bunch of different things on this exciting trip around the Ballestas. Back in the afternoon, we're going to head to a local bodega where we're going to learn all about pisco. And if you haven't had pisco before, this is Peru's most famous and popular liquor. It is similar to grappa. It is a grape-based liquor, and it originates here in this region called Pisco, and is the key ingredient of one of the country's most favored cocktails, known as a pisco sour, also one of my personal favorites. So just like when you're in Champagne, you have to have a glass of champagne. When you're in Pisco, you have to have a pisco sour. So that'll be part of this afternoon's activities. We'll then say farewell to Paracas and make our way back up the Pan American Highway to Lima. And it's here in Lima that our pre-trip extension will end and our main trip will commence. For those joining the main trip, we will begin here in Lima with an arrival, a private transfer from the airport, just like for those who arrived on our pre-trip a few days earlier. And we will once again be in the beautiful Miraflores district with the sea cliffs that you can see so beautifully pictured here. And we'll get a chance to meet our fellow travelers. We'll perhaps have a little icebreaker, maybe another pisco sour. It'll be a first for those who haven't had one yet, and enjoy a relaxing afternoon on the first day of our official trip. On the morning of our first sightseeing day, we're going to set off on a culinary exploration of the city. Together with our local guide, we will wander through the districts of Miraflores and Barranco. We'll check out a local market and get to know a little bit about some of the foods that are produced and form part of this amazing cuisine. Of course, Peru produces some incredible organic coffee, some superfoods, some of which you might not have heard of before. I can remember being shown 100 different varieties of potatoes. I didn't even know that there were 100 different varieties of potatoes. That day at lunch, we'll have a beautiful spot overlooking the Huacapuculana pyramid, and with some amazing views from there. Of course, the food in each region of Peru is a little bit different. Lima, being on the sea, is more fish and seafood based. But as we head to Arequipa and then up into Cusco, we'll find the other foods, obviously meat based, that form the diet in those parts of the country. Our next day is a day at leisure. There's lots of things that you can discover for your own, and we include these because I think it's important that you have a little bit of an opportunity to do some sightseeing and exploration on your own. I highly recommend that maybe you've done this already in considering Peru as a destination, but Google what there is to do in Lima, and you might find some interesting ideas for your stay. Regardless of what you get up to in the morning, we're going to get together for a welcome lunch. And we're doing a welcome lunch as opposed to a dinner this time because it will be a Sunday, and Sunday seafood lunch is just the thing that Peruvians, and specifically those in Lima, do on a Sunday. And it's again a spot with some beautiful ocean views. We've eaten here before. It's a great restaurant. The rest of the afternoon is at your leisure, again, to explore the city and find some interesting and exciting things that you might not otherwise have thought would be part of Peruvian culture. Our sightseeing tour on the next day will focus on the historical exploration of the city. We're going to pass by such places as the Plaza San Martin, the main square, as well as the catacombs that exist between the monastery of San Francisco, where we'll see various layers, no pun intended, of the city's history. There's also a visit to the Larco Museum, which has one of the most incredible collections of pre-Columbian art. Not, I'm not personally a huge fan of museums, but I found the Larco Museum to be quite an eye opener. And this is also the spot where you'll find the so-called erotic pottery. I'll let you figure out on your own what exactly that means. We're going to sample later on that day one of Peru's other famous cocktails, this one called a Chilcano, also made with the local pisco. So you'll have something else to choose from during our adventures through Peru. Leaving Lima, we'll head to the airport for our flight down to the southern city of Arequipa. Arequipa is known as the White City because of the so-called sillar, which is a volcanic stone that most of the buildings are made from. It's absolutely stunning colonial architecture, and it's made even more amazing by the fact that the city is backdropped by 4 different volcanoes, in particular the Misty volcano that one can see off in the distance, usually covered in snow. Really quite amazing. We visit Arequipa first for a couple different reasons, but one important one is that it's a great spot to acclimatize on our way to Cusco, higher up in the Andes Mountains, where we're headed next. Arequipa is at about 2,300 meters above sea level, so it's a great spot for us to spend a couple days and acclimatize as we get higher in elevation. Once we arrive, we're going to have a lovely little lunch and then as well as dinner, and we're going to learn about some of the specialties of the region, which include rocoto relleno, adobo, as well as the local wines that they produce here. And of course, a dinner in Peru wouldn't be complete without some pisco sour. Our tour around Arequipa will take in a full day. And we'll begin by visiting a very colorful market called San Camilo, which is quite a historical site and gives you some interesting insight into the daily life of people in this region. One thing I really liked about Peru is that most of the products that you find are actually locally produced. You don't, I mean, sure, you'll find some sort of made in China souvenirs, but the stuff here is really, really beautiful and worthy of bringing home. So you might want to leave some extra room in your suitcase. We'll head off as well to enjoy some amazing vistas of the surrounding countryside, the volcanoes from the Carmen Alto viewpoint, where we'll see 3 more volcanoes, as well as the Chili River. We'll visit some other interesting cultural sites, including Yanaguara, the picturesque plaza, as well as a monastery of Santa Catalina. We'll then spend a day heading outside of Arequipa to get to know a little bit of the rural countryside. One of our stops will be at the Mundo Alpaca Factory, where we'll learn about not only the traditional but also the modern uses of alpaca wool in Peruvian clothing. So if you're in the market for a beautiful wool sweater between now and then, I would strongly recommend perhaps waiting until a visit to Peru, where you'll find some amazing stuff. We'll also check out Paucarpata, which has the historic Molino de Sabandia, Molino being a mill. It's a 300-year-old mill that is actually still working. And we'll also get to understand a little bit more about this sillar stone, this white stone that was actually used to build the city of Arequipa and obviously towns and villages in the surrounding area. One more highlight of the day will be to see an Andean mummy by the name of Juanita, who is obviously an emblem of the region's past. Our morning today will take us to a very heartwarming place called Casa Hogar de Cristo. This is an organization and a facility which is dedicated to supporting the lives of underprivileged children. So you can imagine what that's like. One of the things we'll do is celebrate the birthdays of those kids who have a birthday in May. And so it's a great way to connect with the local community, make a bit of a positive impact, and understand the challenges, of course, that befall kids who come from dysfunctional families or were abandoned at a very young age. You'll have some time for the rest of the day to explore a bit more of Arequipa, our last day there, and also head off to explore some more culinary delights, perhaps the comida arequipeña, the local cuisine of the region. From Arequipa, then we take our flight back up north to the city of Cusco. But we're not staying in Cusco right away. In fact, we're heading down into the Sacred Valley. And part of the reason for that is for acclimatization. Cusco, the city itself, sits at 3,400 meters or over 11,000 feet above sea level, whereas the Sacred Valley is a few hundred meters below that. And so it's a good way, again, to take one more step up before we actually enjoy Cusco after Machu Picchu. In Pisac itself, we're going to visit the archaeological site of Pisac Village. We'll get our first glimpse of ancient Inca terraces. We'll see a solar clock called Intihuatana and explore the dramatic ruins along the edge of the cliff. This will be our base for the next couple of nights as we explore the rest of the Sacred Valley. One of my most vivid memories from this region was exploring the towns of Maras and Moray. At Moray, we'll discover these fascinating circular terraces that you see pictured here. These were an Inca test station where they experimented with crops to determine how well they would suit and adapt to the local climate and altitude. There's some beautiful views from up here. We'll then head off and have a gourmet lunch at a private home by our friends Tatiana and Jeremy, where we'll taste some more delicious local dishes. In the afternoon, we continue to Maras, which are salt terraces, where we get to see the ancient technique of evaporating the water from from the salty brine, which creates this amazing salt that you can, of course, also buy and take home. It's a great souvenir. I think it's, for me personally, often better to take home something like that you can actually use in your own cooking when you go and try some of those recipes back home. Our next day of touring in the Sacred Valley will have us go to the towns of UK and Ollantaytambo. First, we'll visit a so-called live museum where we'll actually see local women, and it is still predominantly women, practicing the traditional weaving techniques, and we'll see some of the local animals like the llamas, the alpacas, but also guanacos and vicuñas. These are some of the Andean animals that roam through the region, and we'll get to learn a little bit about their cultural significance. At Ollantaytambo, which is actually the gateway to Machu Picchu, where we'll be returning again tomorrow to catch the train, we'll visit some ancient Incan ruins that you can actually climb up. It's quite a spot. Here for lunch, we're going to have a traditional so-called pachamanca lunch, which is a meal consisting of spiced meats and vegetables that are all cooked in hot stones. And during the process of this, where we'll see how this is prepared, we'll learn about the cultural importance in honoring Pachamama, or Mother Earth. So the big day is finally here, and we will head to the railway station for our Vista Dome transfer down to Aguascalientes. After about an hour and a half train journey through some beautiful and diverse landscapes, from open plains to lush jungles, we'll arrive in the town, which is otherwise translated as hot water, obviously for the hot springs that originate there. And we'll set off right away in the afternoon for our first of two visits up to the citadel of Machu Picchu. Beautiful time to visit. We're going to go both in the late afternoon today as well as the following day in the morning. It's the best time to capture the scenes with some light, not to mention that the weather can be quite changeable. And so we may see it, hopefully in both bright sunshine, but it's also quite cool to visit Machu Picchu when you have the fog and the mist descending over the ruins. More apt to happen in the morning, so hopefully we'll get a chance to see both. Keep in mind that on our visit to Machu Picchu, there is a limited amount of luggage that we can bring. In fact, only a backpack carry-on of about 5 kilograms because of space limitations on the train. So we'll be leaving our main suitcase back at the hotel in the Sacred Valley because we're only staying one night in Aguascalientes. Waking up the next morning, we'll have a delicious and sumptuous breakfast before heading up again for the second visit to Machu Picchu. And on this second visit of the citadel, you'll be able to roam around the ruins on your own devices at your own pace. For those who are particularly adventurous, you can opt to participate in a guided excursion up to Huayna Picchu, if I pronounce that correctly. This is this mountain back here, and there is an amazing trail that winds its way up the mountain. Obviously, because you're going up quite a bit in elevation, it is certainly for those who are particularly fit, but the views from up there overlooking the surrounding mountains, not to mention the citadel itself, are quite amazing. There is another shorter and easier trek, basically to a point behind where this picture is taken. So there's a number of different options to enjoy Machu Picchu for our second visit that morning. In the afternoon, we head back down to Aguascalientes in time to catch our Vistadome train, which will then take us again back to Ollantaytambo. We'll make a quick stop at a little textile town of Chinchero on our way back up to Cusco, where we'll check into our hotel and have a wonderful group dinner. And on our first day of exploring Cusco, we're going to head off to the Incan site of Sacsayhuaman. Yes, you heard it right. In fact, the guides often make fun of the name of this Incan site because it sounds like sexy woman, in fact, pronounced Sacsayhuaman. And maybe my pronunciation isn't even right, but what I particularly found interesting about this site is that this is a series of walls and terraces that were erected using massive stones that fit together almost perfectly. In fact, when engineers look at this today, they think it would be a challenge, even in this day and age with modern equipment and huge cranes, to reproduce these amazing structures. We'll also make a stop at Coricancha, a museum that will give us some insight into the evolution of Cusco from the colonial days up till modern times. And finally, our culinary adventure of the day, you'll have the option to sample some cuy, which is otherwise known as a roast guinea pig. I think it's worth a try. You'll have to perhaps open your mind a little bit, but it's better than it sounds. The following day, you'll have a whole day to explore the city of Cusco on your own. It's actually quite an easy city to explore on foot. It's pretty much everything is walkable within the city center, although there is a hop-on, hop-bus tour. You'll be reminded to take it a little bit easy because, again, remember that you are at 3,400 meters or just over 11,000 feet above sea level. So any kind of sort of strenuous activity, you'll immediately notice. That evening, there'll be time to enjoy a farewell dinner with our group. This will be the last day of the main program. So we'll have a chance to have a bit of a feast and reflect on the last days of our adventure through Peru. For those heading home from here, we'll head to the airport to catch a flight to Lima and an onward connection back to Canada. Otherwise, I would highly recommend considering participating in the last part of our trip, which is our post-trip optional extension to the Amazon basin. This is the third ecosystem that we'll visit if you participate in all three aspects of this trip. And a visit to the Amazon, in my opinion, should be on everybody's bucket list. We'll head to the airport in Cusco for the short hop to the town of Puerto Maldonado. On arriving in town, we'll head down to the pier and embark on a boat for a 45-minute trip along the Madre de Dios River to get to our Eco Lodge. This is one of the many tributaries of the Amazon River itself. We're going to spend the next 3 nights at Inca Terra, which has quite a history because it was the first private ecological reserve in Peru, built in the mid-1970s. The facility consists of thatched roof buildings, including the main pavilion with the dining room as shown here. And all of the bedrooms are spread around the complex in these thatched roof cabanas, as you can see here. Some of them even have private plunge pools or are located around the riverside. On arrival, you get an orientation as to the facility itself, as well as what excursions that you can take that are included in the program over the next couple of days. There's a whole range of excursions to choose from, and you can consult our trip itinerary for some of the details. Some of the excursions that I've participated in when I visited Inca Terra and that I would recommend are, of course, a visit to the Canopy Walkway. This is a 340-meter long series of suspended bridges high up in the forest canopy, which allows you a very unique perspective from almost 38 meters above the ground. Following that, there's an aptly named Anaconda Walk, which is a raised platform going through a swampy area. There are anacondas in the Amazon. The likelihood of you seeing one is very small. They're actually very timid creatures. You'd be quite lucky if you got a chance to see one. Another great excursion is a visit to Lake Sandoval and the Tambo Pata National Reserve. Here you'll be paddled through a stream and you can see an amazing variety of wildlife like the red howler monkeys, the otters, and all kinds of birds and reptiles. You'll have a whole another day of excursions from which to choose. Some of the other ones that I've enjoyed in the past include the Gamatana Farm and Creek. Of course, there's a ton of fruits and vegetables that are a product of the Amazon rainforest. And here we'll find out how locals have created a farm to harvest some of these. And you'll be able to sample the fruits and vegetables that you might not otherwise see anywhere else in the world. There's also a visit to the Hacienda Concepcion, which used to be a cocoa and rubber plantation that they turned into another ecological research center. They've got over 200 varieties of plants that they study for medicinal purposes, because of course the Amazon is often referred to as the world's pharmacy. After all that visit, I can promise you you'll have a completely different perspective and appreciation and respect for the Amazon rainforest and the contribution it makes to the world's climate. We'll head back up the river to Puerto Maldonado, another 45-minute boat ride, and embark on our plane for our journey back to Lima, and onwards home. There you can also find all of the detailed pricing and terms and conditions of this program. And I just reviewed here some of the pricing for both the pre-program to Paracas as well as the main program for Peru and our post-trip to Inca Terra in the Amazon jungle. Of course, as with all of our trips, there is a whole myriad of inclusions, and I would urge you to review that detailed trip information document for all of the inclusions. The only things which don't form part of our program are, of course, the international airfare and travel insurance, both of which are available by consulting with our office. And of course, if you have any questions about anything that we have, that I've talked about in today's webinar, or anything else that you might not have found from either our trip information document or our associated travel information documents that really cover a number of other sort of frequently asked questions, then by all means, drop us an email or give us a call, because we want to make sure that you have your questions answered. Here, once again, are our contact details, paula@wheelandanchor.ca, or give us a call on our toll-free number from anywhere in Canada. And extension 250 is how you get directly to Paula. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found this informative. I hope you learned a little something about Peru. And most importantly, I hope you'll consider joining us. This is a trip that we've run a couple of times and have had amazing reviews. I'm sure you'll enjoy everything that this country has to offer.